Hail friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here, and welcome to a Diablo 4 review. But this review is going to be a bit different, I think. It's going to be a dad's review, or a mum's review. If you're a dad or a mum, or indeed a granddad or a grandma, well, I'm not grandma, I'm a granddad. But yeah, this is going to be a bit different in the sense that I'm going to talk about the game. I'm going to review the game from a point of view of someone who has limited time to play. So, Diablo 4 review for dads. It's a Dadblo, basically, which I know it sounds like something that sounds like a different video for a different streaming website, but I might actually put that on the thumbnail as some kind of like a clickbait thing. Dadblo, brilliant. Anyway, we'll start at the beginning with a story. No, we'll start with, first of all, we'll start with a couple of things that I've seen. One of those is seasons. So the first thing to remember as a new Diablo player or a Dadblo is that don't worry about seasons. Essentially, it doesn't invalidate your game, what you're currently playing at the moment. That character will still be there. Think of seasons as like another realm, basically, that your character will be on for a limited period of time. So you'll get a situation where so if you think of like the Eternal Realm is your character that you've probably created, and it's always there no matter what you do unless you delete it yourself. Then you've got the Hardcore Realm, which are servers where if a character dies, that's it, it's gone, and you move on and you try another one if you're into hardcore, if you want to do that kind of thing. And seasons is going to be the same. It's going to be a different realm where you start a character. It's going to last for 3 months, and at the end of that 3 months, I think that the character will be moved on to the Eternal Realm. I'm assuming you might have to have slots available for that. I'm not sure if they'll give you extra character slots when they transfer it across, but yeah. And as I said, the seasons that won't invalidate what you're playing at the moment. What it will do is the seasons will introduce new gameplay ideas, new quests and that kind of thing. So you will be missing some stuff if you don't do the seasons. The thing with the seasons is that I think that I guess it depends on how much you enjoy playing through the game originally. Do you want to go back and start a new character and play through it again to experience some new content? That's something that you would need to decide. Maybe when the season 1 comes out, we can look at the content and then decide, do we want to play that or not? But as a Dadblo, I think you're probably going to play through the story here. Maybe ease yourself into tier 3, and that's probably where maybe you stop playing. My plan is to wait. I want to try out all the classes at some point. So my plan is probably to wait for the seasons and try out a new class every season just to see how it goes. But your money's going to vary on that depending on how much you like the game. But on to the review, as someone who doesn't have, as someone who you may be someone who doesn't have a lot of time to devote to the game, maybe a couple of hours a day, a few hours a week, whatever it may be. So we'll start off with the story, and with the story and a campaign, I'm going to include writing, acting, immersion as well. So we'll do an overall review of that. The TLDR version of pretty much all the game, from a campaign point of view, is that the campaign is too heavily stacked in Chapter 6. And what I mean by that is that Chapter 6 is amazing, and all the other chapters are a bit muted by comparison. It almost felt as though Chapter 6 was designed by a different development team. It's so much better than the rest of the campaign. So for the most part, I enjoyed the story. The writing's good. The acting ranges from amazing, if you're talking about someone like Ralph Innes, who's Finchy from the proper Office, not the dodgy Office. Great character, great voice. People say that people used to say about Richard Burton, where I could listen to Richard Burton reading the back of a fag packet, and Ralph is the same. He's got a fantastic voice. Great timbre to it, and I can listen to him all the time. He plays Lorath, by the way, and he's a great voiceover dude. So yeah, he's really, really good. The story, as I said, for the most part is serviceable. I enjoyed it. There's some great writing. There's a couple of themes in there, I think, like one about you've got things about like faith and like parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, that kind of thing. I really enjoyed the Lilith character. I thought she was really, really good. And I liked her motivation for doing what she was doing, whether it was right or wrong or whatever your opinions are on that. I thought it was really, really good. And I think an Arius I'm not too sure about. really. There might be some spoilers in this, but I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. And Arius' character, I'm not quite sure about. He seemed to fit into the general way that men are portrayed in games at the moment, and I'll talk a little bit about that after this section. But yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed going through the story. I thought the writing was good, the acting was good, but it was all weighted far too into chapter 6. I think that when I think about games like I played recently, like Lost Ark, for example, which is a proper MMO, I guess, ARPG. That had real peaks with regards to set pieces. This game's got some really fantastic cinematics, but I'm talking about game set pieces. I remember in one of the areas that you went through in Lost Ark, there was like a Street Fighter tournament at the end, or playing through it, which was really excellent. There was a castle siege where you got onto a castle, like a siege engine, and the siege engine rolled towards the wall, and you were on the wall, and you could see all the battles going on around you and all that kind of stuff. That was fantastic as well. And a number of others. This game didn't really have those. As I said, it had some great cinematics, but sometimes you went into a boss fight and you walked into a location and you were just in a boss fight. Like Andariel is one that I think it was Andariel was one that I remember, where someone says, "Oh, there's something going on outside," and you run outside and you're in a boss fight. There was no real build up. As I said, there was none of these. Like in ARPGs, I expect peaks and troughs. Peaks are generally the set pieces where you're going wow, and the troughs might sound bad. I didn't mean it that way, but the troughs or whatever or the more the kind of lower, if you think of like an up and down, whatever graph or whatever, the lower points are generally where you're running around killing mobs, leveling up your character. Even though I enjoy doing that, and but it didn't have those kind of set piece peaks for the most part until chapter 6, which I thought was a bit of a shame. But it was overall, it was good and I enjoyed it. And if you're someone who's looking to come into like a high dark fantasy setting, that's very immersive, with good writing, good acting, and a decent story, I think you'll enjoy it, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. And you haven't just got the main story to play through either. You've also got lots of side quests and other MMO-y style activities to do. If you're a Dadblo, you might find you'll skip out on some of those because they are time consuming. If you're a new player, just started, or if you're thinking about getting the game but you're not sure because you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to it, I would just play through the story, essentially. Maybe do one or two side quests that you think might be interesting. Go into some of the dungeons. If there's a certain something like an aspect you want for your character, maybe go into the dungeon and complete that to get the aspect. But other than that, just follow the main story, and I think you'll have a good time. It'll also be, moving on to the combat, you'll also find it more challenging. Now, unfortunately, the game is not very challenging at all. It's quite disappointing in that regard. From a story point of view, particularly, again, until you get to chapter 6. Like if chapter 6 was a seesaw, you'd have a baby on one end and, I don't know, Big Daddy on the other end. It's weighted, or Giant Haystacks if I'm not sure if you're a British wrestling fan. That's how it's weighted. Everything happens in Act 6, whether it's the story, the intensity, the combat, the difficulty. I don't quite understand. Like obviously you want to build up to the final act, and you want the final act to be like really like wow. But the final act, as I said, was so different in that regard that it made the rest of the game feel quite just too laid back, in my opinion, in all aspects. And gameplay as well. The gameplay is just too easy. I mean, if you're a Diablo, start on tier 2, just for some challenge. I mean, and also what you'll find is, like with my Necromancer, I went through the game on just following the main story. And although the game does scale to you, each region does have level ranges. So what you'll find is that you'll go into certain regions where your level is below the minimum level of that region where you're doing quests for the main story. So what you find is that mobs are a bit higher level than you, a few levels higher, but that's quite good because it makes the game more challenging. So if you're an experienced, if you've played games at all, and you're not going to go to end game, or you're not trying to be as efficient as possible, you just want to enjoy the story and the combat, start on World Tier 2. I think that's a little tip, and the game will be more challenging, but it's still not particularly challenging. And as I said, everything is weighted as to chapter 6, when you're going through chapter 6, it really ramps up the intensity of the mobs, mob density, the difficulty, the type of mobs that you're getting. You get quite a few boss fights and whatnot. So again, yeah, it's a strange thing, but it almost felt like chapter 6 was a kind of almost a different game from in that regard, and it's no different from a combat point of view. Talking about the combat, I enjoyed the combat. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoy going into a room of mobs and blowing things up. But going through the campaign until chapter 6, again, it was all a bit, yeah, this is good, but I'm not. I wasn't leaving fights going, oof, like puckering up my lips. Ooh, that was good. I enjoyed that. Again, it was all just more muted than I was hoping until I got to chapter 6. Maybe these are unfair comparisons, but comparing it to something like Lost Ark, for example, playing a sorcerer in Lost Ark and a sorcerer in Diablo 4 is a completely different experience, and it's a lot more fun in Lost Ark. I know some people don't like Lost Ark. It's a Asian game, weeb game, blah blah, whatever it is. But what that game did very well was leaving a fight and going, ooh, it's like the sorcerer abilities and spells in that game fill the screen and they look fantastic. This game is much older than Diablo 4, by the way, but it filled the screen. Abilities fill the screen. There's a lot more mobs, and you really think, oh, this is fantastic, clearing all these mobs. Whereas in Diablo 4, again, you kind of got this a bit in chapter 6, but for most of the campaign, it was just, I guess maybe they wanted most people to better complete the campaign, so they didn't make it too difficult. But it was disappointing, even from an abilities point of view, from how abilities look on the screen. They just look so much more impressive in Lost Ark, which is a game that is, 10 years old now, maybe? More than that, I'm not sure. Maybe a bit less than that. But my point is that I found the abilities didn't make me go, ooh, as I was hoping, as they do in something like Lost Ark, for example. Maybe it's because it's a Western developer. Maybe it's because it's more of a dark, like high fantasy game than Lost Ark is. But I don't know. I would like to have seen I played 3 of the classes to level 40, and Necromancer I got above that into World Tier 3. And none of them really I felt, you've got, the Sorcerer has some AoE abilities. The Druid turns into a bear and slams the ground, which is one of my favourite ones. The Barbarian's got Whirlwind and all that kind of stuff. As you can see here, my Necromancer's got a certain amount of area effect abilities and abilities to kind of clear groups of mobs, but it just never really felt, I never really went, ooh, which I thought was a bit disappointing. But that's just me. Maybe you look at Lost Ark and think, oh, this gameplay is crazy, it's too over the top, and maybe Diablo 4 is a bit more your style. But yeah, I was a bit disappointed. Going back to the story thing, just talking about some of the characters, this is probably something that many people say that I've become oversensitive to, and I have, because I've seen too many of my franchises destroyed by these kind of ideologues, this ideological thinking that you see in everything now, whatever it is, even if it doesn't fit. And this game's kind of got a bit of that. As I said, Anarius is a bit of a dick, but I kind of expected that. I kind of, although the game didn't go all the way in, I kind of felt that the game wanted you to sympathise with Lilith to a certain extent, and I kind of did, so it got that part well. But with regards to some of the other stuff that's going on in the game, on the subject of these ideologues who seem to infest everything from games to films to comics, whatever, and they want to insert their stuff into it. For example, there's a female character in this game, Girl Boss, who basically can do everything. She must be about 15, and fair enough, her mother was a scholar, so maybe she's had some lessons, but she can do everything from raise the dead to talk to them, to read heraldic symbols. And when she was first introduced and stuff, I thought, this is a bit weird. She didn't even really fit into what was going on around me. Lorath was my guide. He's a former Haradrim. That's kind of all you need. She kind of felt shoehorned in. And as things went further on, she became even more shoehorned in, to a point where, there's going to be spoilers for a minute or two, so flip forward a bit maybe, to a point where in the last chapter, she's giving these two Haradrim dudes advice pep talks and bossing them around and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is getting a bit much now, you know. And the thing is as well is that you're in the last chapter building up to the final fight. You got 2 Haradrim dudes. If you create a dude, that's 3 dudes saving the world. And I imagine, you know, that some blue-haired whatever at Blizzard or some 50-year-old bloke like me who feels guilty about being a 50-year-old bloke thought, oh, I can't have that, you know. And so they've inserted this character into it. And it's not the fact that she's female or wherever she may be from or whatever it is. It's just the fact that there's no character development other than some really sloppy character development that, again, just felt like they were just making sure that they did it. You know, it's like she doesn't seem to learn anything as she goes along the game. In the game, anything in the story where something needs to be done, she already knows how to do it, or she learns how to do it in a very short space of time just by flipping through some pages in a book. There's no character development, and these things, this doesn't do any good for all of this stuff that's going on at the moment in popular media. You know, when you get people moaning about these kind of things, this doesn't help. You know, because you've created a theme, you've created a couple of male characters in Lorath and you know, Duan, who. I don't know if it's from an acting point of view, maybe or a writing point of view, but you kind of feel something from them. You know, there's something going on there. It feels like there's development. But this character, whenever something needs to be done, she can just do it straight away. And it doesn't do female characters in media like any favours, really. Just writing them like this. It's almost like they're scared to give a female character having to go through some hardships, some development. Now, they do try to shoehorn something in where she loses an arm. But that's really the only time where you ever hear about this. So it's not really character development because it has no impact on the story. And someone who someone who's not officially but could easily be classed as disabled, I kind of felt that they were just putting it in there just to appease a certain portion of Twitter or whatever it was. It just felt stupid. Her going through the campaign in Chapter 6, kind of being in charge, was ridiculous. And now this is quite a big spoiler, so switch off for a couple of minutes. At the end of the campaign, there's a cutscene that basically, I mean, it almost trivialises everything that you've done up to that point as the hero, because she's decided to go off and deal with the big threat on her own. Oh, I'm going to go and deal with this myself. Like, bye, I don't want you to come. I'm going to do it on my own. So she walks off, and there's a great big cutscene with her in it at the end. Like, I'm the hero. Like, I'm supposed to have saved the world, not her. And she's wandering off into the sunset to deal with the bigger problem that's coming on her own. And it's like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm supposed to be the hero. Whatever character I've created, whatever colour or gender or whatever it is I've chosen, like, they're the hero, and she just wanders off girl bossy into the distance at the end going, I'm going to go and sort out all the problems and whatnot. And it just felt like this was just in there to appease, as I said, mentalists on Twitter, and it's just virtue signalling. I just didn't get it at all. It made, at the end I thought to myself, oh well, I guess I'll just carry on now then. Like, if you know, yeah, I mean, this character's going to go and sort it all out, no problems. So I'll just carry on. I'll just go to World Tier 3 and just carry on leveling. I mean, that's basically all I'm good for. You know, at the end of the day, it just felt really weird as this character's performance or the way that they wrote her through Chapter 6 felt really weird as well. But anyway, you know, as I said, maybe some of you will say that I'm overthinking this and I've become oversensitive to it, but it's obvious. If you're sitting there and you're playing it and you're experiencing this in everything that you're playing and watching and reading and whatnot, it's obvious. You know, it's obvious to a point where at some points it just felt weird. I don't know why this character is here doing this. It doesn't make any sense. Sometimes she just pops up and does stuff out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, like, moving on, you finish the campaign, you've gone through Chapter 6, you thought to yourself, wow, Chapter 6 was amazing. Like, what happened to the rest of the game? You've done all that. What do you do at the end? What do you do after that? Well, I wouldn't recommend doing much at all, really. I mean, I went round and found all the Lilith shrines because even though I'm a Dadblo or a Granddadblo, you know, I've got ample time to play games, as much time as I'd like, pretty much, outside of having to do chores and things and trying to keep myself mentally sane, which is what gaming does, really. I've got time to do that, so I went around and found all the Lilith shrines and whatnot, and I'm just leveling up my my necromancer to go through to go to world tier 4 and that kind of thing. But after the main campaign, there isn't really. There's stuff for you to do, but it's busy work, and unfortunately, it becomes incredibly repetitive after a very short period of time. To go back to the story thing just quickly, when I played through the demo, I said on a video, why can I see other players? I don't understand it. People go, oh, it's an MMO, blah blah blah. But the story is focused around you, supposedly, right, as the hero. It doesn't talk about a group of heroes or a party of heroes or there being many heroes in some kind of weird time dilation type, metaverse type thing. Like, you're the hero. So I don't want to see other players. And the game didn't even let you turn them off. I don't mind it being other players when I finish the campaign, but running through a story campaign where you're the hero and you run into like one of the towns and you start seeing players and one of them's called, I've got a big knob 69 or, Master Killer 1970 or whatever they may be called. I don't want to see that. That completely breaks my immersion. And you couldn't I don't understand why they just didn't let you turn them off. Turn them off, then when you finish a campaign, the game forces you to forces them back on again. So you can play the game through and you can feel like you're the hero up until the end when you're not. I don't understand that. I don't know why that was the case. It was a bit weird. But the problem with the end game is that nothing that you do pretty quickly, you get to a point where you're not even picking up magic items anymore because it's pointless. I don't understand why someone hasn't managed to like finesse this ARPG loot pinata thing that's going on. Maybe it's why Lost Ark just said, look, we're just going to give you some items and you just upgrade them, because you just keep getting stuff drop and after a certain point it's not even worth picking it up anymore. I don't even look at it half the time. It just feels like a waste of time. You've got so you've kind of got that ARPG thing going on, but they're trying to insert these MMO like mechanics into it, and it doesn't really fit with it. The MMO side of it doesn't fit with this loot thing that's going on, because in an MMO, if I'm playing a necromancer and I'm playing an MMO, EverQuest have got necromancers in, right? So say I want this Uber necromancer breastplate. I can go somewhere and I can find out where it drops and I can go and farm it. Maybe I never get it because the drop rate is 0.0001%. Maybe I get it, so you get that kind of like dopamine rush. But at least I know where it drops. In this game, everything just drops anywhere. And so it kind of almost defeats the object of an MMO where you go to a dungeon or you farm. I'm sure Diablo 2 had this where you could farm bosses for certain items. But this doesn't seem to have that. So you just go to a nightmare dungeon or whatever it is and you keep going round and round and round doing the same thing. And something might drop that might be an upgrade. But after a period of time, it just becomes boring and tiresome. I don't understand why this game doesn't have, for example... Sorry, I had to go and deal with something there. So I really lost track of what I was saying. How professional is that? Anyway, yes, the MMO, as I was saying, the MMO stuff doesn't really fit in with the ARPG thing. Like, in the MMOs in general, if you want an item that's unique to your class or it's a great item, you know where it is and you go and camp it, and you might not get it because because maybe the actual spawn of it is weird or it takes a long time and the drop rate of the item is really, really low, whatever it may be, and that's fine. I don't mind that, but at least I know where I can go to get it. But in this game, you've got the MMO side of things, but you've still got the standard ARPG loot thing where you just get tons of loot drops that you don't care about anymore after a while. None of it's an upgrade, and you don't feel like the character's making any progress. I don't understand in this game why you can't go and kill any of the bosses again, like when you move into World Tier 3. I don't think you can, but I think in Diablo 2, as you play through it, you can. I think in Diablo 2 you kind of have to play through the campaign again, but at least you can go and farm the bosses for items, and that's what they should have here. They should take all of the bosses, put them in different areas around the game, or maybe they randomly spawn at some certain points or whatever it may be, or there's a mechanic in place like EverQuest where you can go through something like to trigger their spawn, and then you can kind of camp it for the item that you might get. In this game, after a period of time, you just keep repeating the same process over and over again. And the problem is that even as someone who likes repetitive tasks, repetitive gameplay tasks in games, who can go and sit at an MMO camp for weeks and not get something but still feel that I'm enjoying myself, in this game, things like the Hell Tides, you know, the Whispering Tree and all that kind of stuff, the activities that you've got after finishing the campaign just all become a bit meaningless because your character progression hits a wall and you don't progress any further. But that's getting into a point where you might not actually get to as a Dadblo. You know, maybe that part of the game is not really for you. But I just feel that, like on my Necromancer example, I think at some point pretty soon I'm going to get to a point where I don't really need any. I need some items to improve my character, but getting them is just too much of a lottery, even for an ARPG. I think, just from a point of view of the fact I don't really know where to go to get them. You know, I don't understand why all the bosses throughout the game. I don't understand why you can't go back and fight them again, and they've got a chance of dropping stuff. Apparently, the game's got some really unique items in the really unique. It's either unique or not. Apparently, the game has got some items, some super duper rare items, so rare to a point where only. I think I've only seen one person say they've got one of all the people playing the game. I think there's one particular player who plays a rogue. He's got a couple of level 100 hardcore rogues, I think, and plays the game all day, every day, and he hasn't seen one drop yet. So they're maybe a bit too rare. And I don't mind them being rare if there was some build up to getting it, you know, because these items are also just a random drop from somewhere. Anywhere, any of the hell dungeons above a certain level, and it's not. I personally don't find that fun, but that's maybe for another video when, you know, if I go far into the mid to end game or the end game side of things. But to sum up, like as a game, as an ARPG to play through, if you're interested in. If you've only got a few hours to play and you're interested in going through the story and soaking all that up and getting immersed and whatnot, the game really, apart from some. What I've honestly found quite egregious parts, which did ruin the immersion to a certain extent. For the most part, it's enjoyable to play through. And actually, Chapter 6 is really good. It's one of the best sections of a game that I've played for quite some time. So if you can get the game cheap, it's actually worth playing through just to go through Chapter 6, because it really is a great part of the game. It's just a shame that everything else in comparison to Chapter 6 just feels a bit muted, a bit too low key. You know, it needed to be more boomy, more bombastic. You know, I wanted to come out of fights in the campaign and go, oh, that was a stressful fight, that was a really good fight, or, you know, there's corpses everywhere. You do get a bit more of that as you go into World Tier 3, but that's not the campaign. You know, I don't know. I mean, I used to think to myself, having to play through the campaign again at different difficulty levels. I didn't know how I felt about that. It just felt a bit cheap from a game design point of view. But now I think about it, I'm kind of thinking to myself, maybe I'd like to play through the campaign on World Tier 3. I don't think you can you? I don't think you can, or World Tier 4. You know, I'd like to go and be able to farm the bosses in those tiers. You know, like Lilith and Andario and all that kind of stuff, and whoever, and have a chance of getting some good drops. You know, rather than it just all being completely random. Anyway. That's all I've got. Diablo 4, overall, I've enjoyed my experience, but by far the best experience in every way, with regards to story, pacing, combat, challenge, and whatever it may be, was all in Chapter 6, and the rest of the game just felt a bit muted by comparison. And I just wish there'd have been more, like, as I said, more peaks going through the game, more set pieces and that and whatnot. They tried to copy some of the Lost Ark stuff. Now, bearing in mind, maybe this was in Diablo 3. I can't remember, because Diablo 3 is one of those games that I played through. It was a mess. I didn't return to it after I finished the campaign. But they tried to do some of this stuff that Lost Ark did, where you get to a point of interest and you click a button and it pans back. So you can almost see where you are in like a third person view. But even that, like Lost Ark did better. Lost Ark did mounts a lot better as well. The mounts in this game are just diabolical when the pathing around the world. I mean, my legs, horses' legs were getting stuck on stuff I couldn't even see. It's just rubbish. Anyway, yes, I think that's. So I've sum up because I'm just waffling now, and that is, if you're a new player or you haven't got much time to play, don't worry about seasons too much. It doesn't unless you're worried about some new quests that might come out in the future, it doesn't invalidate what you're currently doing at the moment. And the game is a good experience for a dad blow or a mum blow. If you haven't got much time to play, I think you'll get a lot out of it. But start it on World Tier 2. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.